Hi, I'm Wanda Alger from Crossroads Community Church in Winchester, Virginia. And this is our final session, Session 3, in our Redemptive Gifts series. And hopefully you've already seen Session 1, which was an overview of the different sets of gifts in Scripture. And then Session 2, in which we looked at the first 3 of the redemptive gifts in Romans 12, which was prophet, servant, and teacher. And in this final session, we're going to look at the 4 remaining gifts, which are exhorter, giver, ruler, and mercy. But before we do, I just wanted to make a few notes. One is that a lot of this information we did glean from Arthur Burke, and you can find a lot of his teachings online. He's already done a number of video series. They're a bit old, I think, but the information is still good. So if you're interested in really digging deeper into the redemptive gifts, I think you can find him under Sapphire Leadership Group. And as far as I know, his videos are still online that gets really into a lot more detail about these redemptive gifts. Secondly, as we go through this study, we always encourage people, when we discover these gifts, the purpose is not to label one another or to put one another in a box, but rather to help you to embrace how God has created you. Because when we can really settle, this is who I am, this is how God created me, you can really take a hold of it and start running with it. And it doesn't mean that you even have to stay there, but you can start moving. For me personally, as I went through this study, even though I'm a 5-fold prophetic minister, my top redemptive gift is actually that of ruler or leader. And when I discovered that, which was, by the way, mostly affirmed by my family, not even by the questionnaire that I took, but by those who know me, which is always really the best means of determining what gifts you operate in. It's those that know you best. And so when I realized that about myself, it helped me to understand that even my prophetic gifts were really unto something much bigger. It's because of the big vision that God has given me and the call on my life as a leader. And so when I put all those pieces together, it gave me a lot more confidence in knowing what He intended all along. And that's really the purpose of this. And it's also really helpful to embrace others who are different than us. When we first started teaching on this, it was kind of funny. We did a little skit in our church that demonstrated these different gifts. And one newcomer said she was surprised to realize for the first time that not everybody thinks the way that she does. And we just don't often remember that how we perceive life, how we interpret life is different than others. But everyone does see a part that's needed. And so as we look at these final 4 gifts today, maybe you can relate to a measure of these. And again, like I said in the first session, we're all going to have a measure of all 7 of these gifts. It's just really which one are the primary first 1 or 2 that we're really going to most strongly identify with. So with that, let's take a look at the 4th gift in Romans 12, which is the gift of exhorter or encourager. If you are an exhorter, you love people. You are the life of the party, and you don't mind being the center of attention because you just naturally like being with people. Mostly exhorters are extroverts, but there are some exhorters that are introverts. But for the most part, if you like being around people, then you're not going to be as much of an introvert. But an exhorter has an ability, has a grace upon them to cross over every kind of barrier, whether it's social or racial or economic. You can relate to a lot of different people. That's your grace. You're a great bridge builder. You're a great networker because you have this ability to connect with people. You have the ability to share your faith easily with people. And even in difficult circumstances, it's not hard for you to share your life with other people. You have a big vision for reaching the world. Nothing is too small. You see the best in people, and you're generally optimistic because that's what you are. You encourage people. You always see the best. You pull the best out of situations and out of people, and people like being around you because of that. Oftentimes, exhorters are good communicators because they're wanting to draw people out and talk with them. And because you like to talk, you usually have a lot of practice to learn good communication skills. Oftentimes, exhorters are creative people, and because you're open to new ideas and to new truths, new adventures, new things that most people might not really care about. You love to explore. You're also a visionary because you're always looking at the possibilities of what God might want to do. You're great at reconciliation and mediation. Again, because you love to connect with people and you love to connect people with each other. Exhorters also are hard workers. You stay busy. You can function on little sleep because you're involved in a lot of projects. You just like to be busy. You like to be active because the possibilities are endless in your mind. So obviously, where do you fit? You can fit a lot of places. Life coaches are definitely exhorters because they want you to be the best you can be. Trainers, good speakers, also counselors, and working with social services because you care so much about people. And many exhorters are creative artists, again, because of that creative ability that they have. My daughter, Rachel, she is an exhorter, and she practices this. I see this all the time because she connects with people. She loves being with people. She never has a dull day, and she helps people to work through hard things and difficult things, but she always sees the best in people. And that's why I like to be around exhorters and encouragers, because they really do lift you up and see the best. Another well-known exhorter that I can't help but mention is our own President Trump. I saw this even in the primaries when people were wondering, why is he such a broad generalist and he's always saying everything's going to be fixed and I can do this and I can do that. I just really felt in my spirit like the Lord was saying, it's because he's an exhorter. He's a network person. He can get along with all kinds of people. And some of the things that people have criticized him for, I've learned to recognize, I think it's because he's just an exhorter. He's an encourager, which has its pros. It also has its cons, which we'll take a look at. What are the downsides of being an exhorter? Well, an exhorter can tend to be a people pleaser because they don't want to expose the bad things. They just want to be around people and they just want to like people and they want people to like them. And so that's where you have to guard your heart. Sometimes exhorters, because they're so busy all the time, have poor time management skills and they can overextend themselves. Sometimes exhorters may compromise what is best in trying to get along with everybody. They might settle for good instead of the best if they're too focused on just people getting along. As I had taught before with a prophet who has that high standard and doesn't care if everyone agrees or not, an exhorter, wants everybody to agree, which sometimes is not going to happen. A carnal or immature exhorter might use their influence to achieve personal agendas, or if they have impure motives, then obviously that's not a healthy perspective. Sometimes exhorters, because they always want to see the best, they find it hard to look at the pain, and they might even live in some kind of denial. They don't want to admit of the compromise, or they don't want to admit of the hard things because they just want to look at the positive all the time. And so sometimes they can tend to be superficial because they don't want to go to those deep places. And they can be afraid to face their own weaknesses because they're so afraid of failing. However, as we give this gift to the Lord and we allow the Holy Spirit to redeem us and redeem this gift, the mature exhorter has the ability and the grace to mobilize, to influence, and greatly inspire people to reach their full potential. And again, I can't help but say in President Trump, that's exactly what he did in his campaign. And I think that's why one of the reasons why people voted for him was because he had that grace upon him to mobilize, influence, and inspire people. A mature exhorter, when pleasing God, can have great influence and favor to change people, to change mindsets, and to really lead masses. Exhorters that are mature can be given authority to make those changes and to open new doors. They have a capacity to steward innovation and creativity with great fruitfulness and impact. And exhorters, because of their desire to bring out the best in people, they have a grace to bring people into freedom and new life, especially as believers. So the exhorter reveals a much needed characteristic of God, which is to inspire and motivate. Especially when going through hard times, the exhorter is needed to bring light and life into the darkness, to build faith and hope for the future. And you know, in the New Testament, one of the exhorters that wrote a lot of the New Testament was the Apostle Paul. You look at how many times he said, I exhort you, I encourage you. He obviously was a great apostle with great authority, but he always exhorted people and encouraged people. He drew out the best in them. So let's look now at gift number 5, which is the gift of giver. If you have the redemptive gift of giver, these are some of the characteristics that might be familiar to you. A giver taps into the generosity of a generous God. They love to give. Givers love to give. And not just money, but gifts, time, talents. They love to give things away. Givers are independent thinkers who actually can stand alone because they have great vision. And because they're so generous, they stand above the others. They don't need to depend upon others because they have within them a grace to give what the Lord has given them. Because they have a big heart, they also have a big vision, and they think generationally. People who are givers care about what's come before and what's in the future because they have a big heart. They love to see others flourish and succeed. Now, a giver also cannot be easily conned, manipulated, or guilt-tripped into action. It's just a grace that they have because they really have the real ability from heaven to generate wealth. And so because they're graced with that from the Lord, they know the counterfeits and they're not easily fooled. Givers can relate to a wide range of people. They too are natural networkers. And they're created to steward and increase what has been given to them. And they do it wisely. They just have it easily. It comes easily to them of how to create wealth, of how to generate money, of how to increase what they've been given. Givers have high standards for themselves, and they have high standards for people because they're always thinking of expansion and what God can do. Givers are not confrontational by nature. They're not necessarily worried about past problems because they are so future focused as to what can be. They're always looking ahead. So they really don't have time to deal with things in the past. They're not too concerned about that. Givers are also generally private people because they don't like talking about themselves, especially if they're generous. And this is especially true of people who have amassed wealth and who are wealthy individuals. Sometimes they guard that as well because they don't want to be abused or taken advantage of. And so oftentimes givers tend to be more private. And something interesting about givers is that they have a grace upon them to just find bargains and good deals and discounts. My husband has some of this gift of giving, and my one son, my youngest son, definitely has this gift of giver. I mean, things just come to them. And I know it's rubbed off on me. I used to go yard sailing, and I would always find these hidden treasures that no one else would. Things just come to them, and it's because they have this grace to give. They are conduits. The Lord knows that they're not going to hog it for themselves. They're not going to keep it because their mindset is always in giving. And so because of that, the Lord entrusts the giver with a lot of things. Also, givers can birth, nurture, and protect new things. They are innovative, and they are creators, not only of wealth, but of other ideas. And they also get a quick return on what they begin to invest in. And again, it's because of God's blessing. So in terms of being a giver, anyone that, especially in the financial area, givers are great in the financial and banking, the marketplace, because it's a very practical gift, because they're wise stewards and they know how to use money for the kingdom. But someone that's a giver would also, be great in social services when helping people. Givers make great fundraisers because they know how to network with people, and because they're not trying to amass anything for themselves, but they want to give for good causes. They're good at fundraising. They can be great leaders, and they can be good marketers. And again, like I said, my youngest son, Josh, he had this ability even when he was a child. He would come in from outside, and he would tell me that he'd come in with some money, and I'd ask him, "Where'd you make that money?" And he said, "Well, I just sold my toy for, for whatever." And he just had this, and we never taught him that. He just always had this in him of how to make a profit and how to help people out and yet to get a return for it. And so givers are very special people, and they have big hearts. But because of that, there are also some weaknesses with the giver. So let's look at some of them. Like I said, givers tend to be independent because they're not dependent upon other people, but that can be a weakness if givers tend to block out other people and aren't open to the help that sometimes they do need from other people. Sometimes givers, as much as they're generous to everyone else, they can tend to be a little frugal at home, and that can sometimes cause some friction because they don't think necessarily about their own family all the time. Sometimes givers struggle with dealing with past issues because, again, they're so much looking at the future rather than their past, and they just want to stay positive. Obviously, if we're not giving unto the Lord, and a carnal or immature giver can see money as their security, and you can begin to put your faith and trust in money rather than in the Lord. And because of that, a giver can be prone to hypocrisy if they begin to be focused on what they do through their money rather than on who they are as simply a conduit of God's blessing. And a carnal giver may tend to manipulate people with their gift in order to get something. And so this is something we want to grow in order to be a mature giver, is that our hearts are rightly placed with the Lord, recognizing we're simply conduits. You know, what we've been freely given, we want to freely give. So the mature giver trusts God as their ultimate source, not to their talents or their abilities. They know that they're simply a conduit of God's blessing. They're stewards. Givers build and provide for the future with a balanced generosity. They take risks because their faith is in the Lord to be the one who increases and multiplies that wealth. And they can stand against destructive forces of excess and indulgence when unto the Lord. So the giver is designed to release life-giving generational blessings to those around them. They are ones who can easily bring increase and multiply the provision of God. They're a great source of strength and stability when their faith is anchored in God's supernatural and faithful provision. One biblical example of this in the Old Testament is Abraham. If you read about Abraham, it says numerous times that wherever he lived, all the people around him were blessed because he was there, which is indicative of a giver because they just have that grace upon them for increase and to bless others. All right, redemptive gift number 6 is that of ruler. And as I shared, this is actually my primary redemptive gift. And the gift of the ruler taps into the government of God. Rulers are leaders. In many versions, most familiar versions of the Bible, it says leaders, but some of them say rulers. Rulers are empire builders, visionaries, seeing the big picture. And they're able to get jobs done because they execute the plans of God. And they're thinking about delegation. They're thinking about how things work. They're seeing the big picture, but they also know how to make it happen. They're not just dreamers, but they actually know the step-by-step process that it needs in order to see something big come to fruition. Rulers are usually skilled at time management because they know what's going to be required in order to get something done. And so they're very skilled at even details of a project. Rulers have a grace also to use imperfect people and draw out the best in them. And especially for someone that operates in this gift who is a mature ruler, they're able to see the best in people and to see that innate gift within someone and pull it out in order to be a part of a project and a goal. A ruler can thrive under pressure because they have a lot to do, but to them it's life-giving because they see an end product coming. Sometimes, though, they don't mind others feeling that, which can be good or bad, as we'll see in a moment. Rulers are implementers. They don't just talk about things, they do things. They know how to execute ideas and strategies. They know how to delegate effectively, seeing who can get the job done, who's really the best for a particular job. Rulers focus on immediate tasks without losing sight of the end goal. They're willing to be vindicated by God and not man, because rulers, they have a sense of purpose. There is something within them that they know they are called to, and so they're willing to press through to see that happen because they sense that call from the Lord. And they can withstand strong opposition. And one biblical character that I'll insert here is Nehemiah. You know, he built the wall around Jerusalem, and he had a lot of opposition. But if you read that whole book of Nehemiah, it's a beautiful picture of a ruler that was called by the Lord and knew how to bring people together to see a vision completed. Obviously, to use this gift, a ruler can be used many places: in leadership, church planting, building networks or businesses. They're entrepreneurs. They're great at management. It is a leadership gift. And personally, when I learned about the gift of ruler, you know, I had already operated a lot in the gift of prophecy and as a fivefold prophet. So it was kind of confusing to me when I first went through these redemptive gifts to understand how the prophet mixed in. But for me, I realized that I had a sense of call to leadership, and that actually my prophetic gifts were unto that. And once I knew that, I could really embrace that. And I value leaders, and I recognize those who have that leadership ability and that big picture understanding of the mountain that they're assigned to from the Lord. And this is my heart too, is to raise up leaders and to empower leaders, because they're great influencers. And so we want to recognize, obviously leaders are sometimes easy to recognize, but I think in the days ahead, there's going to be a lot more creative avenues as well for leadership to emerge in this way. Now let's take a look at some of the weaknesses of the ruler. And I can relate to these. So some of these are from personal experience. They can be motivational or abusive in leading projects or goals, because rulers want to get things done. And so if we're not careful, it can come across as control or even manipulation, because we don't mind being under pressure, and sometimes we'll put other people under pressure, and that's not healthy. We can be prone to compromise values if we're only looking at finishing the goal. And if we're not careful, we can run over people in the process because we're so fixed on the goal. We can be task-oriented and not aware of people issues. And so there has to be the awareness to slow down, to care for people over and above the project. That's what makes the most effective rulers and leaders. Because we're not really wired to be good shepherds or caregivers. So you have to be intentional about that, because that is a value of Christ. A ruler can be a workaholic because we love what we do. We love taking lead. We love to see things come together. And we can struggle to find rest, to take those Sabbath rests, to stop work, and to just be still. We can also be too independent because we have learned to stand alone. We have learned to take the lead. And so you have to be intentional to pull back and to welcome other people in your life, knowing that you have to be interdependent with others. And sometimes rulers can find it hard to receive correction because we're so used to giving direction and correcting. And so we have to be aware of that as well. So a mature ruler who's given this gift to the Lord will lead with diligence, will lead with perseverance, will have high moral integrity, because quality is just as important as quantity. And a healthy ruler is going to share authority and leadership with others. And we're not going to be a lone wolf, because we realize this is a team project. We're going to be life-giving in leadership and draw out gifts in others. And people are going to want to be led by us because we do bring out the best. And we're going to demonstrate healthy governing authority and leadership as under the Lord. So when living a yielded life before the Lord, the ruler lives with great freedom and great authority. The government of God is rightly aligned, and it opens the gates of heaven to pour out blessing on all who follow. And as I said, Nehemiah is a great example of a ruler and of a leader in the Old Testament to study. Gift number 7, the gift of mercy. Mercy taps into the heart of God. Mercy people tend to get along with everybody. Everyone loves to be around mercy people because they rarely have an enemy. They really care for people, and they want to take the time to get to know you. They just have the ability to get to the heart, and people feel that. Mercies are safe people to be around, especially for someone that's wounded, because mercies care about the wounds and the hurts. They're very empathetic and compassionate towards those who have been hurt, who have been marginalized. They're great listeners. They have a grace to listen, to be still, to take that time that's needed for someone to share. A mercy also, because they care so much about the heart connection. They hear easily from the Lord, and they're in touch with their inner core and their spirit. They're great worshipers. They're great intercessors, because they really do have the ability to get in touch with the Spirit and to know what the Spirit is saying. They can enter easily into the presence of God. They don't have to try to work it up. It just comes really intuitively to them. They're able to reach the deep places in worship and prayer, and they usually can express themselves fairly easily as well. Mercies, when they come into a room, they can bring a sense of comfort due to their caring personalities. And just like the servant, mercies have a grace to be in sinful environments, around non-believers, with low moral values. And mercies can do that because, again, their focus is so much on caring for that individual. They're not worried about being defiled or, missing a mark of righteousness, because their heart is going out after that wounded person, that wounded individual. And they are intent on carrying and loving that person into the kingdom. They focus on the person first and the issue second. Mercies can be big bridge builders. They can be great mediators in helping people to understand each other, because they always see the best in one another. Where I've seen mercies operate very effectively because of their heart empathy is in counseling, is in pastoring, caregiving. They make great evangelists. And as I said, intercessors and worship. All these areas where they have, you need someone that really has that heart connection, especially to the Lord, and that can bring that into people's lives and situations. One of our church leaders operates a lot in mercy, and I've learned so much from her because she always brings another perspective in situations of what people are feeling, what people are perceiving, the ones that might not normally speak up, or the ones who are marginalized. She's always speaking up for them. And she sees the potential instead of the problems. Where the prophets want to fix the problems, the mercies just want to feel with people and validate those feelings. It's very important for the mercies to validate emotions and what a person is going through. They see value in that, not just fixing a problem. Mercies minister very effectively with the hurting. So there's a lot of strengths in the mercies, but there are some weaknesses. A mercy really craves intimacy because they want to get to the heart. And oftentimes maybe their love language might be touch. And so they have to be careful to set boundaries of intimacy, to keep those boundaries in a healthy place. They can be slow in making transitions or changes because they are processing emotionally. So mercies are probably, of all the gifts, the hardest to make decisions and changes because of all the emotional connections that they have made and the reality of the changes that are going to be required. They operate on a lot of subjective feelings and sometimes deny the facts, and that can be a weakness. Mercies don't like confrontation. They have a belief that confrontation or conflict is going to crush. Sometimes it's hard for them to see the redemptive purpose that God might have in actually confronting a problem or confronting sin. A mercy weakness, they can be a people pleaser and even an enabler at times because they care so much and they're so afraid of confronting an issue or a problem. And so they have to be aware of that. They may actually attract abuse or exploitation because of their kindness or empathy. And so a mercy has to be careful to guard their heart, to not be abused or to be taken advantage of. A mercy, because they feel so strongly, can also be prone to stubbornness, and that needs to be guarded as well. And a mercy can compromise, willing to live with a mixture of holy and unholy, because they're caught in the feelings or the conflicts, and so just need to be aware of that. But given to the Lord through the power of the Holy Spirit, the mature mercy is a tremendous blessing to the body of Christ, because they are able to show a compassion and love with a joy. You know, it says if you have mercy, to do it cheerfully. And that's exactly the redemptive gift, is that there is a mercy that is given to people, and it will have the joy of the Lord on it, and people will feel that, and it will bring great freedom. A mature mercy will be free from the fear of man, and response to the situation is unto the Lord. They know the heart of God and the proper response for the long-term benefit and health. And a mature mercy will observe appropriate boundaries and relationships. They will have learned that, and then will be able to enter into situations with that freedom and with an authority then to really bring positive change. And a mature mercy can actually sanctify the atmosphere. You can change the atmosphere because of the presence of the Lord that you can bring. Because of that time that you spend with the Lord and your ability to connect with Him, you can change the atmosphere. So those operating in mercy are designed to demonstrate the depth of God's love, purity, and holiness. They can usher in God's presence and change atmospheres through their sensitivity to the Spirit. They are the heartbeat of God and can open heaven's gates. And one Bible character that's very familiar to everyone is David in the Old Testament. You know, throughout all of his Psalms, the intuitive and the heart-to-heart connection that he had with God was so evident. So David is a beautiful study in the gift of mercy. The last gift that we're going to look at, that was the last gift that we looked at, was mercy. That was the seventh gift. So I hope that you've enjoyed this series on the redemptive gifts that we've looked at. There are 7 gifts. And probably after taking the questionnaires, after listening to each of these descriptions, and then hopefully sharing with your family and friends and asking for their input, you will be able to arrive at what is your primary redemptive gift, the one that you can really identify with the most, the one that you feel like, wow, if there's any one that I can really identify with, it's that one. And then maybe the second one. The top 2, I feel, are the most helpful in kind of understanding how you're wired and how to move forward. And as you learn, what I have found is that as I work at church with people, in the workplace, and in relationships, I begin to identify what other people's gifts are. And it begins to be a joy to draw out those gifts in other people and to recognize and acknowledge, man, you just really have a heart of mercy. That is a real gift of the Lord. Or I recognize that they have a gift of giving, and I call that out. There's a lot of people that don't know their gifts. And so we have an opportunity to call those things out, to bless them, and to really be a catalyst for people to discover who they are in the Lord and why they are here and the purposes that they have unto the Lord. And we can grow in all of these areas. And I'm sure that in all of these descriptors, you could identify a little bit with each one of them, which is a good thing. It's my desire to grow in all of them and that we can embrace that in one another. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. Please share it with others and let them know about these teachings. We want everyone to be equipped and to know who they are in the body of Christ. So thanks for listening.